Okay, good evening, everyone. We have completed our 3 minutes of Tehillim series, and we're going to be beginning the 4 minutes of Mishlei tonight. 4 minutes because I noticed I average a little bit longer than 3 minutes, but if we end up doing it less, I think no one will be upset. So 3 minutes of Mishlei. Today's Perek is Perek Aleph, the first Perek of Mishlei. What does the word Mishlei mean? So it's often translated as Proverbs, but the first pasuk says that it says Mishlei Shlomo bin David Melech Yisrael, that Shlomo he taught or he gave Mishlei. He gave what the word that we may be more familiar with is Mishalim. He gave parables or parallels or comparisons. That's what Rashi says. Kol devarav dugmos u'mishalim. He gave examples and comparisons, analogies. Why use the methodology of mishalim, of comparisons and parables at all? So some Mefarshim say that parables or stories or proverbs are easier tools to make a deep, more difficult, complex idea more understandable and more accessible and more easily able to be grasped. Through metaphor, you can sort of paint a picture of an idea that's a little bit more abstract. Another thing that the Rambam says actually in his introduction to the Moreh Nevuchim is that metaphors are an educational tool that are able to present people who are not even necessarily scholars, but people who are the laymen, someone who maybe doesn't have the background of the knowledge, but can understand and is intelligent. Sometimes you need to use a comparison, something that is not maybe the technical, let's say, area where you're discussing, but you compare it to a different discipline. You compare it to something else in the world at large, and it can be more. It can be add a new dimension to understanding. The Vilna Gaon and the Malbim, they both say that mashal refers to an actual metaphor, whereas melitza, which we'll soon see, it's actually, I'll just quote it for you now, it's actually referenced in the first Perek. It says that it uses the word mashal u'melitza in pasuk vav, lahavin mashal u'melitza divrei chachamim v'chidosam, that let the wise man hear, to understand an allegory and a figure, that's how they translate it, the words of the wise and their riddles. So the Vilna Gaon and the Malbim, they say mashal is the comparison, is the parable, and then we often use a term, the nimshal. The nimshal is what the lesson is, and that's how the Vilna Gaon and the Malbim say the melitza is. The melitza is how we apply the parable back to a lesson or a moral lesson. So that's how they explain the word mashal and melitza. I want to highlight pasuk ches. Pasuk ches is a very important pasuk about parenting. The pasuk says, "Shema b'ni musar avicha." Listen, child, to the musar, to the discipline of your father. V'al titosh toras imecha, and do not forget the Torah of your mother. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that this is always the case. It seems to be that there are different paradigms of parenting. Some parents, the father's the strict one, and the mother's the loving one, and sometimes it's the opposite. Everything comes from love, anyways. But I want to highlight something very interesting here that I heard first from Rabbi Kahanunu, who did a chinuch panel on Shavuos, I believe in this room. He said, notice something in the pasuk. It says, "Shema b'ni musar avicha." Listen to the musar of your father, which means some things as a parent or even as a teacher and any type of idea you're giving you're trying to impart to someone else, you need to tell them an idea. You need to teach them something they didn't know. Listen, Shema, here, b'ni musar avicha. This is how the Ageres Ramban, the letter that Ramban wrote to his son, he starts off with this pasuk. So that's something that we teach by telling somebody or a child who doesn't know something. However, there's another thing, which is al titosh toras imecha. Don't forget the Torah of your mother, which means you already have it. You've got it through osmosis. You've seen, through example, you've seen the way a person lives. You learn it almost just by imbuing that atmosphere around the person. That's not by necessarily learning something or being taught something. You just you imbibe it. You just pick it up, and don't forget that. And there's a beautiful comment of Rav Soloveitchik and a famous hesped he gave for the Tolna Rebbitzin. It's written up in tradition in 1978, where he said there's two kinds of Masoras. There's two kinds of traditions. There's the tradition of the mother and the tradition of the father. And he spoke about himself as a child. He said the fathers taught us how to observe the Shabbos, but the mothers taught the generations how to greet the Shabbos, how to enjoy her 24-hour presence. And he says just some beautiful language here. He says, most of all, this is what he's talking about from what he learned from his own mother. He learned that Judaism expresses itself not only in formal compliance with the law, but also a living experience. She taught me that there is a flavor, a scent, and a warmth to mitzvos. I learned from her the most important thing in life, to feel the presence of the Almighty and the gentle pressure of His hand resting upon my frail shoulders. I don't think there needs any more comment after that. Beautiful citation. So that is the experiential, we could call it, that we pick up, that we can't forget. That's what we learn from our parents. We also need instruction. We also need both the instruction and the experience, and that's both the Torah's imecha as well as the Musar Avicha.